Hello and welcome to Brain Says Strange Things. I'm Patrick, this is my brother Jordan, and this is the podcast where we talk about horror movies. This week we are going to look at a couple of horror documentaries, fairly recent ones, directed by a guy named Rodney Ascher. He made a pretty big splash on the horror scene with his documentary Room 237 about Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. And this past year, he came out with a film about sleep paralysis called The Nightmare, where we watched both of them this evening, and we're going to be discussing them tonight. We'll start off with our discussion of Room 237. So as I said, this is about Kubrick's The Shining, but it's really about what I would call fan theories about the film. So in this movie, he interviews a variety of people who feel as though they have sort of unlocked the mystery of Stanley Kubrick's masterful horror film. And they've assembled all of these pretty elaborate theories in terms of what the movie is really about based on what they think are clues kind of hidden by Kubrick in the film. And we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty details about some of what these theories are as it goes along. The movie has a pretty unique format, too. It is, I don't think you ever see any of the individuals who are being interviewed on screen. You hear their voices. And the movie is assembled pretty much entirely of clips from The Shining, other Stanley Kubrick films, and other movies, which is pretty interesting and fairly effective, I thought. But overall, what was your take on Room 237?
I liked it.
Okay.
It was good.
It was good?
It was interesting.
Okay.
No, I didn't really get a lot out of it, I think. Mm-hmm. I think it is a lot just fan fiction, basically, that.
Yeah.
I don't know. The reason I don't like the fan fiction is because it eventually ends up being like it's self-serving. Or like it's about the person telling the story, Mm-hmm. And it's all like conspiracy theories. And the guy was talking about, and the cops, I know they're watching me.
Right, that guy was...
that guy. There was another person in there too that was kind of like that.
He was kind of the ultimate example of the kind of like furthest edge of this, because he mm-hmm. believed that Stanley Kubrick himself was involved in filming the video of the moon landing. This man believes that the video of the moon landing, whether or not we ever actually went to the moon, is false. So he's kind of one of those.
So I don't know if they have an actual credible person, in the actual documentary.
Yeah,
I think the theories are interesting.
He was the only one that I felt like, as far as just like, okay, this guy's a nut. You know what I mean? But he's clearly a smart guy.
Right.
But yeah, at the end, and so he believes that The Shining is essentially Kubrick's confession of, his involvement with having made this film. And but yeah, at the end he's like, I know the government's watching me and I expect them to audit my taxes and all. So he's clearly like one of these guys. Like, I was reminded of people that come into the bookstore where I work, and you kind of overhear these sort of conversations of the kind of people come in there sort of late at night and kind of make you wonder a little bit. So.
But it always just becomes about them, I think.
Mm-hmm. But maybe that makes it more interesting.
I guess. They were interesting takes on it. I think it's just like, like what makes a good lie is like a little tiny kernel of truth in there.
Sure.
Like, I don't think any of these theories ran through Stanley Kubrick's head, but the evidence they present is convincing to a certain extent.
Uh-huh.
But I also think that Kubrick leaves all his movies like purposely vague.
Yes.
Like just vague enough. And
yes.
he knows that.
Yes.
And these people, I don't know if they really know that. Oh, but one connection I made between the two people that were talking is they were talking about how they had a big moment when they finally got it on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Or on tape.
Yeah.
Two of them said that, and I was just thinking, like, Kubrick did not even know about Blu-ray or anything like that. Like, I think these movies were meant to be watched over and over again. Mm-hmm. Like, I've seen The Shining and stuff and his movies over again. But there's a line there. And I think that a lot of these people go over that line.
Yeah.
And it kind of like, it feeds itself and it just gets carried away. And by the time you're at the end of your theory, it's like, you've built up this whole thing. How could it not be right? You know, so I think
well,
they
and
just
some
kind
of
of
and some of the people who they speak to do kind of acknowledge that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like one of my favorite things that was said in the movie, and I forget like which person, which theory said what, but he said something like, you know, what Kubrick's doing with all these clues and symbols and suggestions is opening doors, right? He's opening doors to your ability. And he's also creating a trap for people like me, the guy said. The people who kind of get locked into trying to find the answer.
See, that's what
and the answer ultimately isn't there. You know, so there is some acknowledgement of the futility of this effort to unlock the answer to The Shining.
That's kind of what I didn't like about it a little bit. Like, I didn't like that there wasn't really an opposing view. Or a sane or a credible person. I mean, I think
they're credible to. I think you're doing.
They're credible to a certain degree, but
they're not. I didn't think these people were like nuts.
No, I don't think they're crazy.
The one guy was a little.
I don't think they're crazy, but you didn't hear that. Like the part that I thought was interesting when they played it, because this is a theory I've heard. You know, it's like the play Pink Floyd's.
Yeah, I thought of that. Yeah,
over whatever it was.
Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I thought of that. Yeah,
it matches up.
Yeah,
and they show it like. How they superimpose it going backwards and forwards. They play the movie backward and forward, and they superimpose
it, which was really a really cool like art film idea.
But it's just kind of its own thing.
Yes,
you know, it's like,
and of course, the only things that match up. Of course,
the only thing I thought of when I saw that, I'm like, you could do this with any movie.
Yes. Oh yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, and
but they don't offer like the argument like, well, you know, in filmmaking there are things like angles. And things that, like, point perspective. Things that match up no matter what kind of movie you're in. Of course there are things that are going to match up. And they make, like, a big point, like, there's a time when there's blood over the screen where he's staring. It makes for a really cool image, but Kubrick didn't think about
Well, that would have been impossible.
Yeah, it would have been impossible with the technology. And, I don't know, I think they just kind of feed on themselves. They just,
I guess...
They get carried away.
Yeah, I do. Well, yes. But I guess... So I feel like I have a lot to say about this movie, even though I didn't like it nearly as much as the next film, The Shining. But I do agree with what you're saying, and it's kind of what kept me from seeing this movie for as long as I did, because there was a lot of talk about it when it came out. And I was like, oh, we should see. We talked about doing it on the podcast for quite a while. But frankly, the least interesting thing in the world to me, like if you want me to not click a link on your website, you know, have the title be "This Fan Theory Will Change Everything You Know About Whatever Movie." I just could not be less interested in that kind of thing, and that whole kind of idea of like movies as puzzles to be solved is to me just like the most boring approach to talking about movies. You know, it's just so uninteresting to me. So that's what kept me from you know watching the movie for a long time, and I kind of thought that all the way through the movie. You know, I'm like, come on, people, convince me there's something more to this, and they never really did. But I do like the fact that they did, like I said, sort of acknowledge like what you're talking about. Like there was some acknowledgement of, like I said, the futility of trying to find an answer to these things. There was some of that in this movie.
Sort of, they kind of say it kind of like jokingly, like, "Oh, I know I'm wrong about this theory," and then they present their entire theory. You know,
a lot of them though were very confident that they had, you know, really figured out what The Shining is.
And some of it is interesting, like the way, like I know some of that stuff isn't just pieced together. Like I said, there's a little bit of truth in that. I think Kubrick was trying to put things in the background. Yeah, subliminal. That was interesting. I didn't know that. Like I knew he was like into advertising.
Well, yeah. Oh, I see. I didn't know that. And
I don't even know if that's a true story.
And it's obvious from Kubrick's films that he is he's one of these directors who just like he really controls the image. So like the t-shirts people wear, this and that. I mean, it's all thought through. But I don't believe that Kubrick had a single secret code that could be unlocked by one reading of this film. See, I think he knew a lot about Freud. I think he'd read Freud. You say he knew a lot about advertising, and I talk about that in the film. And I think he knows how to put loaded symbols and loaded imagery into the movie that will invite the kind of fan theories that these people are engaged in and make the film seem larger than it really is. And that's kind of the genius of Kubrick. He's not a genius because he was trying to say one thing about American Indians and he made The Shining into a big metaphor about that.
I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry. I went on and on and on. Kind of like the people in this documentary.
Yeah, I don't remember what it is.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't think any one theory in this movie was correct, and I think because the movie spent so much time just explaining the theories, it was a little boring, I thought.
Yeah, that's kind of all it is, I think.
Yeah, that's mostly what it is. Yeah, I liked. What did I really like about it? Like, what did I think was really effective?
Well, I remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
Because I heard an interview with Matthew Modine, the guy who was in Full Metal Jacket, the main guy Joker, and he put together a scrapbook, like an actual book that got released and published, I guess is what you would say. And he was doing an interview, and he was talking about, because people were asking about Stanley Kubrick, and they were talking about like fan theories, and they say like, well, there's a scene where there's a fire hydrant or a fire extinguisher in the background, and then you cut, and then the next scene it's gone, and people like assign all kinds of theories to this, and that was in this movie as well with the chair. And then Matthew Modine was saying like, well, he just cared about the specific shot. He didn't give a shit about continuity at all. All he cared about was like the shot looking perfect, and he said like, he set up the shot. The next time he looked at it, the fire extinguisher was there and didn't look right to him. He got rid of it. Like, that was it.
Interesting.
Like, he's really interested in what's in the frame, like each individual scene as like a picture, because he was like a photographer. So maybe like not even the continuity thread, because even when they're talking about the layout of the hotel, it just gets ridiculous.
Oh yeah, that was really uninteresting.
Because right away they even say, and people know this, like, they use the exterior from one place and the interior of another. Of course it's not going to match up.
Right.
They're going to do the best they can.
And this window couldn't really exist if you pay attention to where this hallway was. That's in every single TV show movie ever made. You know, that's movie making, you know.
Yeah. I could write a fan theory about an episode like Saved by the Bell.
There's a mix of that kind of stuff in here. Of stuff that you're like, nope, just nope right away. Other stuff you're like, maybe. And other stuff like, I don't think that was intended, but your theory is interesting. So it's kind of a mix of that.
That's pretty much what it is. I was like, I don't think that's it, but that's kind of an interesting.
Yeah, and again, like talking about like Kubrick's intention, like how intentional was this stuff. They sort of acknowledge that too, that idea that even if Kubrick didn't intend this stuff, even if he didn't make the chair disappear for a particular reason, that doesn't necessarily invalidate someone's interpretation of that, right? So like in modern literary theory, like these fan theories are as valid as anything Kubrick may or may not have intended. So I like that idea was in there, although maybe when you say like you wanted an opposing view in this movie, do you mean just more somebody who is just like, no, you guys are all wrong. There's no secret. Yeah, I think maybe that could have enhanced it. I guess that was there enough for
almost
me.
Because you always want to like, I don't know, put yourself in the movie somehow. And I was just kind of like listening to a bunch of theories, and some are more interesting than others. Some are crazy. And it's just like, it didn't really add up to a lot.
No, it didn't.
And even like, I don't know.
I
didn't get a lot out of it.
Ultimately, I ended up kind of feeling about the movie like I thought.
I think I kind of went in the opposite way as you. When I heard about the movie, it sounded like it was about how different people see movies. How different people see
that would have been.
It's not about that.
Yeah, no, it's about these particular theories. You're right. The movie behind this movie, like a movie about this movie, in a way, would almost be more interesting. Like what about certain films causes certain kind of people to come up with these kinds of
because that's the discussion that it generated. So it's like, you think the movie's going to be about it,
right? And
it is, if you want it to be like your own fan theory. If you
this
want
is getting a little meta because now we're saying like, well, maybe Room 37 was really about something else. We're gonna have to watch
when
it
they're
again.
doing the whole numbers theories, and I know there are people that are really into that, but it's just ridiculous when.
Well,
just like if you there's the number 2 and 4, and it keeps repeating. And if you times it by 36, there are 36 cars in the parking lot. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, like, some of the theories kind of reminded me of like, and I really do want to emphasize, like, I don't want to be mean to the people in this documentary, because I actually think everyone.
No, I don't think they're dumb.
They were clearly smart. Like, they clearly knew how to like in a way, they knew how to watch a film. It's just not really how I like to watch.
In a way,
films.
they're a lot smarter than most
But
people.
oh yeah, definitely.
Making
These are intelligent
because that's
people.
what human brains do. Like they make connections,
Well,
even when there aren't any.
Yeah,
and that's what they did.
There was like part of it. It kind of like reminded me in a way of like when like you know, people watch these bad documentaries on Netflix about like the real, like, Jesus had a wife, you know, like some like fringe like kind of theory, and like they make a documentary and like Joe Sixpack watches it and he's like, well, I learned from this documentary, you know what I mean, like you've discovered some secret.
And that's always a horrible way to go into movies. It's just like, I will accept whatever you have to say at face value.
Yeah.
And like, you should go into any movie like suspend the disbelief.
Right.
But you can't go into something like that thinking like, well, that's the truth. And that's kind of why I wish there was an opposing view.
Yeah.
Not that I think, I don't know, maybe Joe Sixpack would think that these theories are correct, or that one of the theories is correct.
Yeah.
I just don't watch movies that way.
No, I don't either, and I find it a really uninteresting way to watch movies and a really uninteresting discussion. And all of my favorite directors and favorite films tend to ask questions without answering them, and I don't want to answer the questions, and I don't want anyone to answer them for me. And like one more thing I want to say kind of on that note is my favorite scene in The Shining, and perhaps my favorite all-time horror movie image, they do not mention in this film. And you know what? I'm kind of glad they didn't. Because the reason that scene, and it's the scene where Shelley Duvall, I think it's just running down a hallway that's towards the end of the film, she looks in a room, and horror fans will know this scene. It's very brief. You see a man lying on a bed, and at the foot of the bed is a guy in some kind of a bear costume or animal costume. He's like a furry. And the man sits up, and they both turn and look at Shelley Duvall, and that's it. It's this bizarre, funny, frightening, completely unexplained, out of nowhere image. It's there, and it's gone, and that's why it's scary. Because there is no explanation, and there is no order, and there is no design, and that's true horror, and that's why horror movies like The Shining are effective. And this documentary kind of works against that impulse. It tries to explain the unexplainable. You know, a good commentary should enhance the experience of the film, and I don't know that any of these theories enhance it. For me, they kind of diminish it.
Well, they did make me want to watch more.
Just because I was reminded of what a great filmmaker he is, you know, because they use actual clips from the films.
But the reason that I think that works in The Shining is because they earn that. They earn the ability to put kind of a weird scene in their movie. You know, it's so cold and quiet, and long shots for such a long period of time. And there's some silly moments in it. They brought up that part where she walks in the room, there's skeletons. And I didn't even remember that from the movie. And I've seen it pretty recently, too. And, like, the things that, like, really stick out to you become important to you. And that's why it always seems like it becomes so self-serving. It's like, this is my movie, and this is my scene.
Yeah. But that's...
And why it's important to me.
But that's interesting, you know what I mean? Like, I remember I had a literature professor who's like, you know, whatever you tell me Shakespeare is about, that tells me something about you. You know what I mean? So, and I guess that's one thing.
Yeah, so in a way, they're just like revealing more about themselves than what they think about the movie.
And I think they would acknowledge that. I mean, that's interesting. So, ultimately, though, I wouldn't like go hardcore out of my way to recommend this movie because
I don't think I would either.
You know,
it's interesting to a point, but not enough.
To the point that you like fan theories, and it's a very well made documentary. But yeah, it was very well praised. So I'm glad we finally saw it. But in fact, I think his follow-up, which I've heard much less about, that came out this year, The Nightmare, was vastly superior. So this is a documentary about sleep paralysis. And if you don't know what sleep paralysis is...
Don't Google it.
Do not Google it. Actually, you shouldn't even listen to us talk about it. But it is this really terrifying... I actually know a lot of people, yourself included, who've experienced some form of it. A really terrifying sounding condition where you sort of enter this half wakeful, half sleeping state. You're aware that you're in this state, dreaming, but you cannot move. You're paralyzed. You're aware but paralyzed. And many people who experience this have very intense, bizarre, nightmarish hallucinations and see images which are common to people around the world who are prone to sleep paralysis. I get goosebumps just talking about it. When I first saw this movie last month on my own, it terrified me. I was really scared of this film, so I was really excited to talk about it on the show and have you watch it. So what was your take on The Nightmare?
I did like it better.
Mm-hmm.
It's a much better movie.
Yeah.
I almost kind of feel the same way.
Okay.
I wish it had an opposing view a little bit.
Agreed. And that is a criticism that I actually didn't even think of when I first saw it.
You don't really think about it because it is effective.
It's very effective.
The reenactments they do range from like super cheesy to really creepy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's really consistent in that either. I do like the fact that they do reenactments. That sounds kind of dumb. They do reenactments of people's dreams, but how could you possibly do it? I mean, the one guy even says it when he's drawing the picture of it. He's like, it always looks cartoony and silly when I draw it. Of course it would.
And again, like Ascher kind of acknowledges that in a more subtle way in this film, because you see the actors who kind of play the Shadow Men and the monsters at certain points getting their costumes ready to do the reenactments. So Ascher is aware of the limits of this filmmaking style, but he's a very bold filmmaker, because when the movie first started, when I just was like, oh, I'm going to watch this fun little documentary about sleep paralysis, and they started going into the reenactments, I'm like, oh, geez, this is going to be like cheese ball. Yeah. But you know what? He just commits to that, method of filmmaking, and very soon you kind of adapt to it, and it becomes really effective, I thought. So
I think it taps into what it's talking about. Like, even when we watched It Follows, which I thought was great. It just, like, simplicity works in your favor so much.
Yeah.
And then, like, these reenactments, they look kind of cheesy, but, I mean, they still freak you out. It's just like a shadow person.
Yeah.
And it taps into that, what this movie talks about, like, the same archetypes that everybody has. Not everybody, I guess, but maybe subconsciously. And they all share these same dreams. I mean, they're kind of really simple dreams, a man in a doorway. So, I don't know. I mean, I think everybody's probably had that in some form or another. Maybe. I don't know. I have. But it always makes me want to think, like, these people are all kind of similar in the, like, personality-wise, sort of. Don't you think? Aren't they the same kind of type of person?
That's why it would have been interesting to have an opposing viewpoint. Because I think that the movie does try to present these people as being from very diverse backgrounds. And they do seem to be...
They're from different parts of the country and the world.
But I don't know that there were a lot of commonalities between them, although occasionally one of them would make kind of a little aside, and you'd think, like, I'd like to explore that a little more. What do you mean you had a tough childhood? I think a couple of them said that.
That's the part that stood out to me, too, because I always want to assign it to, like, have some physical reason.
Yeah.
Tangible reason why this is happening to you.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're being visited by a demon.
Okay.
And then at the very end, that one girl does throw it. She's like, I think I should tell you, I did come from an abusive home.
Yeah.
Like, you should have told us from the beginning.
Or let's explore that a little bit. Yeah.
But instead, I think these people kind of get into that like they would get into anything else. Because it seems like, I don't know, like, they've become experts in this field.
Oh, yeah.
They've all got, but it's like, the one sane person, I think, is that one lady.
The
Christian lady.
Because she's the only one who escaped.
Because she's just like, oh, so you don't think about it anymore? She's like, no. And she makes videos on YouTube, really lame, right? and then she talks about, they ask her, does she ever watch anybody else's videos that they send to her? And she's like, no, I don't.
It's kind of like us.
I just don't want that. Yeah. I've sent her many videos. She's just like, no, I don't watch that. I just don't want that in my life. And I think that's like the
healthiest right
whether it was the power of Jesus that she invoked or not, it worked. It's like just the power of positive thinking almost. It's like, I think the other people go the other way, and they're just like, even the one guy,
and it kind of feeds on
the younger guy,
who
talked about that really creepy dream with the cat on the chest. I have freaked out.
Now, what do you think? Where's your rational explanation for that?
I don't know. That's
where
the one that
girl
made me
laying next to him woke up.
See, that's always tough when there's a witness.
Yikes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing.
That's kind of the one that made me like, I wish there would have been that moment in the other movie. where you're like, oh shit,
maybe
I never thought of that.
Well, that's kind of my take on this movie, other than just like pure unrelenting terror, because I think this is just a very. Did you think this movie was scary?
Yeah,
I was very. So I'm gonna say this movie was my favorite horror film of 2015. And what I really loved about it was that it made me feel like I felt when I first started watching horror movies. Like I felt like I was a horror movie virgin again. Literally, I just had goosebumps the whole movie. I found it so scary. And literally, when I went to bed that night, I thought to myself, and I was really thinking this, I should not have watched that movie. I should not. So it was terrifying, but it was also thrilling, because that's what horror movies should be. And I just thought it was so great that I had this powerful experience from this film. But, like, what do I really think in terms of what is this sleep paralysis? I would say I'm 99.9999999% sure it's science. It's like chemistry.
Kubrick, you have to leave the door
open. It's the brain, but that door is open a crack. Mm-hmm. You know, you do wonder, you know, the one guy talks about, like, his theory is kind of like, you know, this is your brain just kind of working overtime and being privy to the raw data that of the universe that not everyone is equipped to interpret and perceive, and this is how your brain attempts to make sense of that by putting it into these these Jungian archetypes. And whether that's science, or whether that's something mystical, both are terrifying. Right? Because it suggests a reality larger than something that we can ever
you can't draw on a piece of paper or recreate in a movie.
Right. And that the world and our minds are so much more bigger and mysterious than we understand. Whether that is a scientific idea or a supernatural idea is terrifying either way.
Well, I've thought about that before too, and that really struck a chord with me because he was talking about being like hyper aware, and I think I might have a little bit of that.
Well, why don't you tell us
not
about...
like I'm trying to like say like I've got superpowers or something.
Yeah.
But I'm the type of person that lays in bed and I like hear the person walking out on the road, you know, and that like bugs me, and I can't sleep with that noise. Like little tiny little things that no one else even notices, and it just like bugs the hell out of me. I don't know. I could talk about this for a long time because I've had a little bit of this.
Well, why don't you talk about whatever experience you've had with it? Because I say I really haven't. When I was a very young child, I used to have nightmares. They kind of stopped when I started watching horror movies, and I don't have any kind of sleep paralysis or anything. A lot of my friends have since told me that they have. So what have you kind of experienced?
I've had the thing where the bedroom door where you have a figure standing in it. I've definitely had that. I've had one where you can see the door is closed and you see the little shadow.
And are you in this kind of like paralysis state where you like you perceive yourself as being in the bed and you're aware but you can't move?
Yeah, you know where you are. And the one I had where you could see, I still remember it. You could see the bottom of the door. You see the light coming in underneath. And then you can see like feet standing there as if there's someone standing like right behind the door. So you can see like the outline, the feet are casting a shadow too. And then you slowly realize that the person's standing on this side of the door. And then they like come towards you and then you wake up. You're like, whoa, like it just got hit by something.
Yeah.
I've had that before where you just like, they explain in the movie where you're just like trying to like fight through it like,
wow.
I know I'm awake, like get up, or I know I'm dreaming. And I've had ones where you're just like, I know I'm in a dream, so I'm going to do the old cliche thing where you pinch yourself. And then you just don't feel anything. Just like, it doesn't even feel like anything. And it's weird. It's a weird sensation when you like realize you're dreaming and can't get out. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how some of these people live with this. Just knowing you're going to experience this.
Doesn't that make you think like maybe it's not as severe as they think it is? They have to have jobs and
but I mean I guess you just learn to live with it, you know, like people learn to live with pain or something. You just learn to live with this like nightly horror. But oh man, I was afraid to go to bed that night. But I mean that's another reason with like whether you believe in like a mystical explanation or a scientific explanation for this, it's scary either way because they talk like I think one thing that makes any horror movie like really effective, like the most effective horror movies are ones that offer no escape. Like something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's just so intense. There's no comedic relief. There's no escape in that film. And this movie was like that. There was no like escape, because when I started watching it, I'm like, okay, well, I was comforting myself thinking like, I don't have this condition. It's terrifying to hear about.
That was fucked up
But
to throw that at
then
the end.
one of the things that they talk about, and they make sure to bring it up again at the end, is that I didn't have it until somebody told me about it, and then I had it for the rest of my life, and it was horrible.
That's a messed up thing to throw it at the end of the movie. I like that. Though.
And that is the kind of thing like you're talking about. Like you know, that could have a scientific explanation. Like, yeah, now you're thinking about it. Now your brain is using that, and you're spitting it back to you as a nightmare.
Well,
or it could be like you could think like that's kind of a weird, eerie, mystical kind of thing.
But even though the one guy who had like increasingly bad ones, the youngest guy.
Yes.
I think he had like the most compelling stories.
Yes, he did.
But even he was kind of like, and then that one night I went to bed and I just kept saying over and over to myself, like, don't think about it, don't think about it, don't think about it. And of course you're going to think about it.
Yeah.
And he even knew that. But it's just like your own brain like going overtime, like taking control. Once, like that's what it is, being out of control.
Yeah. But I guess the thing for me is like, it's scary either way. You know what I mean? But you're right.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, whether it was the power of Jesus that she invoked or not,
or just
doesn't matter. Like,
getting out of that headspace, you know.
She could have been thinking about anything else, you know.
Right.
It's like I don't think it was that specifically what did it, but
but it doesn't.
I think she has probably the best approach to it.
Yes, but it doesn't make the movie any less scary, and in a way, it doesn't make what they're experiencing any less real, right? Like let's say it is a demon and it's terrorizing these people in this way. Okay, that's horrifying and horrible. But let's say it's just their minds that are doing this to them.
That's still scary.
That's just as horrible. Because the effects on them are just as real.
It's just like you go into a state where you can't control anything.
Yeah.
And that's what's scary about it. Whether it's like...
Yeah, this loss of control and...
It might be something else controlling you, or it might be just your brain kind of like letting go and not controlling anything. Either way, you're not in control.
But it's interesting what you say about like your criticism of the movie in that like you wish... Like, same as Room 237, that 237, there had been an opposing viewpoint. Like, because I didn't even think of that, but I was actually looking online today and I saw some criticism of it saying, like, and there's not a lot, I mean, most people like it, but you know, you could have had some scientific experts who studied the phenomenon talk about it. Some doctors, some sleep experts, some psychologists. And it's like, oh yeah, that seems like a really obvious omission and probably a deliberate one. And I wonder if the film would have been more or less successful as a horror movie if they would have had those people in there. Like, do you think that would have made it less scary?
Well, I'm not saying like it should have been in there. Kind of like with Room 237, like, I don't want to tell the guy how to make his movie.
Yeah.
I think this is what he wanted to make. He wanted to make a movie about different people's theories on the movie. That's the fact that people see different movies differently, and that discussion, that's a totally different discussion.
Right.
So I find that to be more interesting.
But you're not gonna not knock him for not making the movie you wanted to make.
Right. I'm not like it is missing that part. I would have liked to see that part, but for what it is, you know, I think it works. It's not. It would have been more compelling to me. Make it personal to me, I guess. I don't know. I feel the same way about both the movies.
Okay.
Like, even just have one person in there, because all the data comes from the same people.
Yeah.
And they even say that. The one guy is like, it can't just be something that comes from within. You know, you have to. These dreams have to be fed by something else.
Yeah.
And they all kind of allude to that a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
They do have the one girl who has a pretty scientific approach. I mean, she's like the closest to like a scientist you get, where she's like, I believe it's like, you know, yeah, we're all human beings, we're all the same species, so of course our brains are on the same archetypes, we're in this liminal dream state, you know. So I mean, that's about as close as you get to like the rational scientific explanation for it.
See, but that is an interesting part too, because
it is.
She's just like, you know, we're all human beings, like we come from the base same location. Of course we're gonna have similar like visions and dreams and stuff. And then you think about it like, yeah, that's right. Like, yeah, why don't the other people in the cast think about this? They're too caught up in their own fan theories.
Yeah.
Not saying that
in a way
their experiences are real to them.
Yeah.
But
you know, it's
away.
interesting in our discussion here. I'm realizing how similar these two films are. And
I thought they were very similar.
These are all about people discussing. Yeah, I mean, The Nightmare is about fan theories too. It's their theories.
You go so deep down that rabbit hole. It's just like you get trapped.
You get trapped
in the
like
labyrinth.
in the Room 237. Yeah, interesting. So again, the more interesting documentary is almost the one that sits just behind this one about the psychology of the people who do this. But in The Nightmare, I
thought that was interesting the way the director kind of put himself in it a little bit.
Yeah,
he had
experienced it,
but he just kind of like mentioned it a little
bit.
I actually did want to know more about that. You know, like what drove him to make the movie. I guess.
Right. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I guess I would say I think they probably should have brought in some maybe people who knew about it, who had studied about it, professionals who had not experienced it. I kind of don't think if you would have done that in the right way, I don't think it would have lessened the horror because, like I said, even if it is just in your mind, it's fucking terrifying. You know.
But I bet if you would interview a lot more people, you would find out that they had similar experiences where it happened, and then it went away.
You know, and that's been my experience.
I think these are rare cases.
Yeah. Well, yeah, clearly.
Life-consuming.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, clearly. Yeah. Just like most people saw The Shining and were like, "Oh, that's a really great movie, and I wonder what this meant." And I think, and then they moved on with their lives.
Right.
These are the people who got trapped. You know. But I guess that makes for a sort of interesting movie. Sort of interesting in the case of 237, but I thought fascinating in the case of The Nightmare. So I really recommend this movie. Would you like give it a high recommendation?
I would recommend it.
Yeah, definitely.
I was creeped out by it, so.
Yeah, if
whatever that's worth.
Yeah, if nothing else, just for a really effective horror movie. But I think it gives you a lot to talk about and think about afterwards, and hopefully you won't begin to experience the phenomenon yourself. I wonder if anyone, after having seen this, has. That would be interesting.
Oh, of course, I'm sure someone's.
Well, I thank God my first time through I hadn't, so hopefully I'm still.
Just repeat to yourself, it won't happen. It won't.
I'm gonna call the name of Jesus. I'm gonna bring that's because she's the only one who got out of it. So I'm like, whatever, that I will.
The only one in the documentary.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, a couple of interesting films and one great one, I thought. So yeah, any final thoughts on these two documentaries?
No.
Looking forward to seeing what the director does next.
Sure.
I am. I think he's got an interesting sensibility, and he has a really effective filmmaking style.
I do like the horror documentary style.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the found footage style, but a different take on it.
Yeah, exactly. And he takes a little different approach into how each film is constructed, but they're both very well done and very effective.
And you can tell even the first one is all just basically clips. Like, he could have made that on his home computer.
Yeah.
Probably did. Not saying that that lessens the impact.
No, I thought it was.
I think it's great.
I thought it was really cool. I thought it worked really well.
But this one, then they start to add the reenactments, which I think really helped the movie a lot.
Yep, totally agree.
So he's kind of evolving, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does. I kind of hope he sticks with documentary rather than goes into
do what you know
narrative film. But definitely a talented guy, one to watch. So I think that'll wrap it up.
What's his name?
Ascher. What's his first
Rodney.
name? Rodney Ascher. For the life of me, I cannot remember his first name. Rodney Ascher. So definitely an interesting guy. Definitely check him out. But start with The Nightmare. If you dare. It's one of the few horror movies, like, there's certain people asked me if they should watch it and kind of told me, like, their particular triggers for what they really didn't. And I was like, no, you shouldn't.
You should watch The Nightmare, and then as a come down, you should watch Room 237.
Yes, there you go, to calm you down. So, all right, well, that'll do it for us on this episode of Brain Says Strange Things. We will attempt to be back soon, very busy this holiday season, but we're going to try to keep these episodes going on a somewhat regular basis. So hopefully we'll be back pretty soon to talk to you guys about more horror movies. Until then, pleasant dreams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye.